Hey guys, so I think I have it figured out. At least I have a pretty decent workaround for the IMU problem. I don't think it's a proper fix, but it works pretty well and lets me ride on trails. And I think that this is pretty good. And to me, the main criteria is if I can go full speed on trails regardless of bumps and all the obstacles, then it's good enough for me. And I'm gonna go and test this out now and see if I can go the same speed that I can go on an XR. All right, now I'm ready to go, wearing my Big 5 Ninja Turtle outfit. So let's do this. I have to keep the phone on so I get the audio and the screen recording. Obviously, you can't screen record if you turn the phone off. I also have to say, I really don't like going fast on trails, so this is not something I normally do. But as you can see, we have an uphill here. We're pushing 1,000 watts and it's doing really great. There is no nose dipping whatsoever. The board is super stable. I'm flying up this thing here. But somebody with a bit more somebody braver than me will probably be able to go a lot faster here. At least I can say with confidence that there's no way I would go any faster with an XR over here. And also, I'm never lacking clearance in the nose area to accelerate more if I wanted to, so this is really good. Yeah, feels really stable and reliable. Now we have a little downhill section here, super stable. And now this is a flat section. But this is about the fastest I will ever go on trails, I think. So don't expect me to go faster than this. But I really see no reason why there should be nose dipping at higher speeds than this. And if anything, the biggest risk right now actually is people riding stock XR batteries and expecting that they can go the same speed that they can go on an XR, because we don't have field weakening enabled, which means that you're truly limited by the kV of your motor and the voltage of your battery, and that gives you a natural speed limit below 20 usually, on a well below 20 on a stock XR battery. So that was test number 1. Test number 2. We're going down and up a steep hill, also on gravel, and then getting kind of rocky. And here comes the sketchy section. All right. Yeah, so this is working out really well. Keep this now on the up. Alright, same here. There's no way I can go faster on an XR. Now, the next test is grass. It's pretty well, I have to say. Also, I've never been on this one, which means I don't know where the holes are. And pretty sure there's not much I can do about big holes. Green carpet right here. Alright, that was pretty successful too. Alright, 15 psi, and here's some mixed grass and dirt. Original training ground right here. I had no chance with the original firmware, even with OSR2 enabled. I had nose dips pretty much guaranteed at about 8 miles an hour. Alright, here it comes. This was always the worst environment, and I'm actually, as you can see, still nose dipping a little bit. So there still are corner cases where it can happen. So you do need to watch out. Do not blindly trust my code. See, here it still goes down when I'm accelerating from a lower speed, but yeah, so this cobblestone is my worst case test environment. Everything else seems to work fine. Let's see here. So if I approach, what do we got here? 12 miles an hour. It goes down a bit. Alright, that was the last test. And this was with 20 psi, I think.
Yeah, he did.
19.6, okay.
Yeah.
So, close enough. Let me also show you how it is configured. You can hear this beeping right now. If you do have a buzzer, by default the buzzer will go off when bumps are detected, so it tells you when it is in operation. Alright, let's connect. And now we go to app config and then look for a balance, and in the last one, multi-ESC. Alright, let's get rid of that beeping first. So the last three are what controls it. So if we set any value here in roll steer KP, that's any value that's not 0, we write that, then the beeping stops, so we don't have to listen to that. Now, I've made it in this firmware so that by default, even if you have nothing in multi-ESC, that you do get the IMU correction. So if you want to disable it, you have to set the last value to 0.01. So this setting right there will turn the IMU correction off completely. So if you somehow have reason to believe that there's a problem with it, if you don't trust it, if you want to see, if you want to experience for yourself what it's like without it, that's how you would turn it off. So 0.01 turns that off. But I assume you don't want to turn it off. And basically the default, if it's all 0, is having it set to a strength or intensity of 1.5. So that's down here. That would be too long if I hold it. Sorry, doing all this while we're riding. So 1.5. Oh, there's no decimal point here. Oh, that's great. Alright, let's do 1. We'll do the 0.5 later. And then in rolls, so that's in the yaw current clamp. In roll steer, ERPM KP down here, which is 0, we have 500. So that's the default. So if we go and write that, by the way, you cannot write while you're riding. It either will make you nosedive, or if you have my firmware, it will just reject it. So now we're writing this. Okay, now I have the decimal point back. Alright, 1.5, 500. That is the setting that you get with all defaults. So if you have 0, 0, that's the setting you get. Now, what does it mean? 1.5 is the intensity of the correction. So that's the yaw current clamp. And you can play with that. You can make it more mellow so it doesn't correct as much by going down to like 1.0. Or you can go higher if you want to correct more. Originally I used to ride with about 2.0 or 2.2, but it turns out it's not necessary and it overcompensates sometimes. So 1.5 is a value I like. And that you can go up to 2 or 3 if you want, but I doubt that you will need anything more than 1, than maybe 2. Then the other value is the correction sustain. Essentially, the bumps, so the IMU confusion often continues after the last bump occurred. So after I detect the last bump, you can say how many milliseconds you want to continue the correction after the last bump got detected. So that would be the 500, would be 500 milliseconds, meaning you get a half-second grace period in between bumps, and it'll keep the correction going. So by the way, here we're testing this wooden bridge, which used to be a problem. And with the Vega tire at 15 psi, I still feel a little bit nervousness on this wooden bridge. On the other board with the, on the other board with the treaded tire, I don't get that. It's perfectly smooth. So there are still cases where, in this case, I'm not getting nose dips, I'm only getting nose lifts, but it's still happening. Anyway, so the 500 milliseconds in roll steer ERPM KP, that's the sustain. If you do it too short, like 200, 100 milliseconds, then you will see that in bumpy terrain that's not consistently bumpy, your nose will be dipping and then correcting and dipping and correcting. So you want a longer value. We played with values as long as 1 second, which seemed to work fine too, but 500 seems to be the perfect medium. We don't need longer than that. So that is how you configure it if you want to fine-tune it yourself, or if the defaults don't work for you. And now let's go and do a proper test ride on this bridge. Alright, so now worst case tests. 20 psi on the Vega tire going over this wooden bridge. And yesterday I actually made a mistake and I loaded the wrong firmware, so my feature was not actually there, and I tried to figure out why I was struggling. As you can see, no problem. Alright, 20 psi on a Vega tire. This time, I actually, oh shit, I almost ate it. Fuck. And this has nothing to do with the nose dipping, but just rock hard Vega tire is just really tough off-road, damn it. Yes, so I personally would never ride a Vega tire off-road at 20 psi. At 10 psi, it actually works really well. But this is just to really stress test my bump compensation. And it works, but it's just scary going faster. Alright, that's gotta be good enough. Let's do a bumpy uphill as well. Damn. It's just really tough with the Vega tire, man. 20 psi. Alright, let's add some grass to the mix. Now, if you want to know how it works, here I'll try to describe it in a nutshell. So, first, I try to detect the bumpiness, and when I detect it, I try to correct it. That's all it is. And how do I detect it? I've basically looked at a whole bunch of micro logs where I looked at what the IMU pitch data looks like when it gets bumpy, and so I try to identify those bumps. And when I see spikes essentially in the pitch data, that's a criteria for bumps, and I measure their strength and I measure the distance between the spikes. So when I see that there is essentially if my algorithm checks to see if the amplitude and frequency of those spikes matches the bump pattern, and if it does, then I enable the correction. And the correction is based on running a secondary IMU filter, and that one is more gyroscope based than accelerometer based, and that one tends to not drift when it gets bumpy. And so what I do is I take the difference between the gyroscope based and the accelerometer based position, and I inject that into the algorithm, into the IMU filter. And yeah, that's all it is. So the intensity controls how much we correct, how quickly we correct, and the sustain essentially is just continuing to do the correction after the last bump was detected. So that is it. The new firmware is now on GitHub under releases. I have the link in the description. And I hope you all have fun with it. Be safe. There are corner cases where it will not work. I have still, with especially high PSI tires, on certain types of bumpy terrain, like this one cobblestone area, you can still get nose dips, but for most terrain, I'm super confident that I can ride without hesitation and maintain any speed that I feel comfortable on in general. So, that's it. Nice. Yeah. It does, yeah. Because you like surfing, it's like snowboarding. How'd it go? Nice.